You've been insulted, attacked, maybe even humiliated in front of others, and everything inside you screams for retaliation. Your muscles tense. Your mind races through a dozen comebacks. You want to destroy them with words, to show everyone who's really in control here. But what if I told you that the moment you react, you've already lost? What if the real power isn't in striking back, but in becoming so unreachable that their attacks dissolve into nothing before they ever touch you? Nietzsche understood something most people spend their entire lives missing. He saw that the strong don't need to prove their strength. The sovereign individual doesn't waste energy on every dog that barks. There's a philosophy buried in his work that goes beyond simple stoicism, beyond turning the other cheek, beyond passive acceptance. It's about winning a battle your attacker doesn't even know they've lost. It's about invisible victory. Think about the last time someone tried to provoke you. Really think about it. What did they want from you? They wanted your energy. They wanted you rattled, defensive, engaged in their reality. They wanted proof that they could affect you, that they mattered enough to disrupt your peace. And if you gave them that reaction, if you fought back, you handed them exactly what they were hunting for. You made them significant. This is the trap most people live in their entire lives. Someone disrespects them, and they feel compelled to defend their honor. Someone challenges them, and they must prove themselves. Someone questions their worth, and they scramble to justify their existence. But every time you do this, you're operating from their frame, playing a game where the rules are designed for you to lose. Because the real victory isn't proving you're strong. It's being so grounded in your own truth that their opinion becomes irrelevant. Nietzsche wrote about the concept of master morality versus slave morality. In slave morality, your worth is determined by how others see you. You're good because you're not what they call bad. You're valuable because they validate you. Your entire existence becomes a reaction to external judgment. But master morality operates from a completely different place. The sovereign individual creates their own values. They don't wait for the world to tell them who they are. They know. And here's where it gets interesting. When you truly internalize this, when you stop deriving your sense of self from external validation, attacks stop working. Not because you're numb or disconnected, but because you're so firmly rooted in your own center that someone else's words can't shake the foundation. They're throwing stones at a mountain. The mountain doesn't fight back. It doesn't need to. I want you to imagine two scenarios. In the first, someone publicly criticizes you, questions your competence, your character, your choices, and you respond. You defend yourself with logic, with evidence, with counterattacks. You engage in a back and forth. You might even win the argument by conventional standards. But what's happened energetically? You've entered their arena. You've shown them they matter enough to warrant your defense. You've validated their position by opposing it. Now imagine the second scenario. Same criticism, same public stage. But this time you don't react, not out of fear or cowardice, but out of genuine indifference to their judgment. Maybe you smile slightly and continue with what you were doing. Maybe you simply ignore it completely. What happens? The attack lands in empty space. There's nothing for it to grab onto. The person who attacked you is left holding their aggression with nowhere to direct it, and everyone watching sees something profound. They see someone who cannot be moved, someone who exists beyond the need for external validation. This is what Nietzsche meant when he talked about the Bermensch, the person who has overcome the need to react to the herd. The herd operates on resentment, on keeping score, on making sure everyone stays in their place. But the individual who has transcended this doesn't play that game anymore. They've realized that true power is selective engagement. Not everything deserves your energy. Not every attack warrants a defense. But let me be clear about something, because this gets misunderstood constantly. This isn't about being passive. This isn't about letting people walk all over you while you smile and pretend everything's fine. This isn't toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing. This is about strategic sovereignty. It's about understanding the difference between a genuine threat that requires action and mere noise that craves attention. Nietzsche himself was viciously attacked during his lifetime. His ideas were misunderstood, twisted, rejected by the academic establishment he once belonged to. And how did he respond? Not by trying to convince his critics, not by engaging in lengthy defenses of his work. He simply continued developing his philosophy, knowing that truth doesn't need defense. It only needs expression. He wrote for those who could understand, and he let the rest remain in their confusion. That's invisible victory. That's winning without fighting. Think about the people in your life who seem unshakable. Not the ones who are loud and aggressive, who constantly assert their dominance, but the ones who carry a quiet certainty. The ones who can receive criticism without crumbling, or the ones who seem to operate from a different frequency entirely. What do they have that others don't? They've stopped outsourcing their sense of self. They've stopped letting other people's chaos become their emergency. Here's what happens when you start practicing this. At first, it feels unnatural. Your ego screams at you to defend yourself. Your conditioning tells you that silence equals weakness. You feel the urge to explain, to justify, to make sure everyone knows you're not what they're accusing you of. This is normal. This is every program you've been running since childhood, trying to maintain control. But if you can sit with that discomfort, if you can resist the compulsion to react, something shifts. The first thing you notice is how much energy you conserve. All those hours you used to spend ruminating over what someone said, crafting the perfect comeback, playing out arguments in your head. Suddenly that energy is available for things that actually matter. For your work, for your growth, for the people who deserve your presence. You realize how much of your life force was being drained by people who didn't deserve a single thought from you. The second thing you notice is how your relationships change. The people who were constantly testing you, pushing your buttons, trying to get a reaction. They either escalate briefly and then disappear, or they completely change how they interact with you. Because you're no longer feeding the dynamic they were addicted to. You've become unpredictable in the best possible way. They can't manipulate someone they can't affect. And the third thing, the most profound thing, is that you start to see reality more clearly. When you're not constantly defensive, when you're not viewing every interaction through the lens of threat and protection, you can actually see what's happening. You can see that most attacks aren't about you at all. They're projections. They're someone else's pain seeking a target. They're the flailing of people who feel powerless, trying to feel powerful by diminishing others. Nietzsche wrote that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but he wasn't talking about enduring suffering for its own sake. He was talking about the alchemy that happens when you face challenges without being destroyed by them, when you let experiences forge you into something more resilient, without letting them make you bitter or reactive. Every time you choose not to fight back, not out of fear, but out of sovereignty, you're becoming stronger in a way that's invisible to everyone, including yourself, until you look back and realize how much you've changed. Let me give you a concrete example. There's a successful entrepreneur I know who built a company from nothing. As the company grew, so did the criticism. Competitors spreading rumors, former employees making accusations, random people on the internet convinced they knew the truth about motives they couldn't possibly understand. And this person watched it all happen without saying a word. No press releases defending themselves. No social media posts setting the record straight. Just silence and continued building what up in. The rumors eventually burned themselves out because there was no fuel for them. The people making accusations looked increasingly unhinged, attacking someone who wasn't fighting back. And the company kept growing because all the energy that could have gone into damage control went into creating value instead. Years later, the truth became obvious to everyone, but it didn't need defending. It defended itself through results. This is the philosophy Nietzsche was pointing to. Results speak louder than words. Character reveals itself through action over time, and the person who knows their own worth doesn't need to convince anyone else of it. They simply live it. And living it consistently and authentically is more powerful than any defense or counterattack could ever be. But here's where most people stumble. They confuse this philosophy with being a doormat. They think not fighting back means accepting mistreatment, staying in toxic situations, allowing themselves to be exploited. And that's not what this is about at all. There's a massive difference between not reacting to provocation and not protecting your boundaries. If someone is genuinely harming you, threatening your safety, violating your space, damaging what you've built, you take action. But you do it strategically, not emotionally. You do it from a place of protection, not revenge. You do it because it serves your sovereignty, not because you need to prove anything. And often, the most powerful action is removal. cutting off access, eliminating the relationship, walking away completely without explanation or justification. Nietzsche understood that the truly powerful don't need to destroy their enemies. They simply make them irrelevant by continuing to ascend. You don't fight with people beneath your level, not because you're arrogant, but because you're focused. You're building something. You're becoming something. And the person attacking you isn't part of that vision. They're not worth the energy it would take to engage. This requires brutal honesty with yourself. You have to examine why you want to fight back. Is it truly about protecting something important? Or is it about ego? Is it about boundary enforcement? Or is it about needing to be right? Is it about preventing real harm? Or is it about managing how you're perceived? Most of the time, if you're honest, it's the latter. It's ego protection disguised as and ego protection is expensive. It costs you peace. It costs you time. It costs you energy that could be building your future instead of defending your past. Every moment you spend proving yourself to people who don't matter is a moment stolen from the life you're trying to create. Nietzsche would call this slave morality in action, letting others set the terms of your existence. There's a reason why the most successful people, the most grounded people, the most powerful people in any field seem almost immune to criticism. It's not that they don't hear it. It's not that they're delusional or arrogant. It's that they've done the internal work to separate their identity from external opinion. They know who they are. They know what they're building. And they know that explaining themselves to people who are determined to misunderstand them is a waste of breath. If you want to practice this, start small. The next time someone makes a subtle dig at you, don't respond. Just notice the urge to respond. Notice where it comes from in your body. Notice the story your mind creates about what will happen if you don't defend yourself, and then let it pass. Choose differently. Choose silence. Choose the invisible victory. You'll probably feel uncomfortable. Good. That discomfort is your conditioning dying. That's the old pattern, recognizing it's no longer in control. Sit with it. Breathe through it, and watch what happens. Watch how the other person reacts to your non-reaction. Watch how the situation dissolves when there's nothing to push against. Watch how you feel hours later when you're not replaying the interaction in your mind. This is training. You're training yourself out of reactivity and into sovereignty. You're rewiring decades of programming that told you your worth depends on defending yourself from every perceived slight. You're becoming someone who can't be baited, can't be provoked, can't be pulled into someone else's drama. And that version of you is infinitely more powerful than the version that needs to win every argument. Nietzsche spent years in isolation, in poor health, largely ignored by the intellectual world. He could have spent that time bitter, angry, fighting for recognition. Instead, he used it to go deeper into his work, to develop ideas that would eventually reshape Western philosophy. He won without fighting because he was playing a completely different game. He wasn't trying to win arguments. He was trying to articulate truth. And truth doesn't need to fight. It only needs to be spoken. Part 2, now let's go deeper into what this actually looks like in the complexity of real life. Because understanding the philosophy is one thing, living it consistently is another. The world will test you constantly. People will interpret your silence as weakness. They'll push harder when you don't push back. They'll mistake your lack of reaction for lack of capability. And this is where most people break. This is where they revert to old patterns because the social pressure becomes too intense. But here's what you need to understand. That pursuer, that testing, that escalation. When you don't respond, it's not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's actually confirmation you're doing it right. When you stop feeding a dynamic, it gets worse before it gets better. This is universal. The person who's been getting energy from provoking you will double down when you cut off their supply. They'll escalate. They'll try new tactics. They'll push every button they know because they're addicted to the reaction, and addicts don't give up their drug easily. This is the crucible. This is where you discover if you've really internalized this philosophy or if you were just performing it. Because when someone attacks you harder, specifically because you didn't react the first time, everything in you will want to finally put them in their place. You'll tell yourself you gave them a chance. You'll justify that now you need to establish consequences. But that's still operating from their frame. That's still letting them dictate your actions. The true test is, can you remain unmoved? Even when they escalate, can you maintain your center? even when they're trying everything to shake you? Can you continue choosing sovereignty over satisfaction? This is what Nietzsche meant by becoming who you are. It's not a one-time decision. It's a moment-by-moment choice to live from your own values rather than react to external chaos. Let me tell you about a dynamic that plays out constantly in professional environments. Someone publicly challenges your work, questions your decisions in front of peers or superiors. Maybe they're genuinely confused, or maybe they're positioning themselves by diminishing you. The instinct is to defend yourself immediately, to explain your reasoning, to prove you're competent, and sometimes that's necessary. But often, the more powerful move is to simply acknowledge their point and move on. I hear you. Let's discuss that later if needed. And then continue. What happens if it was a genuine question? It gets answered privately without derailing the group. If it was a power play, it falls flat because there's nothing to leverage. The person looks petty for pushing further, and everyone in the room notices something. They notice you can't be rattled. They notice you don't need to defend yourself constantly. They notice a quality of leadership that comes from internal security, not external validation. This plays out in relationships too. Personal? Once someone you care about says something hurtful. Maybe it's in anger. Maybe it's their own insecurity manifesting. Maybe it's a test to see if you'll chase them if they push you away. The reactive response is to hurt them back, to defend yourself, to demand an apology, to explain why they're wrong. And sometimes those conversations need to happen. But often, the more powerful response is to create space, to not take their emotional state personally, to let them have their feelings without making those feelings about you. This doesn't mean accepting abuse. It doesn't mean staying in relationships where you're consistently disrespected. But it means understanding that people lash out from their pain, not from your inadequacy. And when you can hold that awareness, when you can see their attack as information about their internal state rather than truth about your worth, you stop needing to fight back. You can respond from compassion, or you can remove yourself entirely, but you're no longer controlled by their chaos. Nietzsche talked about amor fati, love of fate, acceptance of what is without resentment. This is directly related to the philosophy of not fighting back. When you resent what happens to you, when you need reality to be different than it is, you're in constant conflict with life itself. Every attack becomes evidence of injustice. Every criticism becomes proof that you're not valued. Every challenge becomes personal. But when you've cultivated amor fati, when you've accepted that difficulty is part of existence, attacks lose their sting. They're just weather. You don't fight back against rain. You either take shelter or you keep moving through it. This is advanced. This isn't where you start. You start by not reacting to small provocations. You build up tolerance for discomfort. You practice sitting with the urge to defend yourself without acting on it. You rewire your nervous system's response to perceived threat. And gradually, over time, you develop this capacity to remain centered even in the midst of legitimate conflict. But let's address the elephant in the room. What about justice? What about accountability? What about preventing others from being harmed by someone who attacked you? These are valid questions, and they reveal the nuance that's often missing from discussions of this philosophy. Not fighting back doesn't mean not taking action. It means not taking action from ego, from need for revenge, from desire to hurt someone because they hurt you. If someone is genuinely dangerous, if they're harming others, if they need to be stopped, you can take action without it being about you. You can report them, expose them, remove their platform, whatever's necessary. But you do it as a strategic decision, not an emotional reaction. You do it because it serves protection or justice, not because you need them to suffer for what they did to you. The motivation matters. The energy behind the action matters. Nietzsche would argue that the truly powerful act from abundance, not scarcity, from creation, not destruction. If someone is in your way, you don't need to destroy them. You build around them. You make them irrelevant by ascending to a level where they can't reach you. This is invisible victory at scale. This is winning so completely that your opponent doesn't even realize they lost because you stopped playing the game they were playing. Think about this in terms of attention economy. We live in a world where attention is the primary currency. Everyone is competing for it. Influencers, brands, individuals, all fighting to capture and keep your attention. And in this environment, conflict generates attention. Drama generates engagement. Attacking and defending creates spectacle that draws eyes. So when someone attacks you publicly, especially online, they're often not trying to defeat you. They're trying to create a spectacle that benefits them. And if you engage, you give them exactly what they want. The invisible victory is refusing to participate in the spectacle. It's continuing to create value without getting distracted by the noise. It's building something so compelling that people naturally turn away from the drama to focus on what you're offering. This is strategic on a level that most people never consider. You're not ignoring the attack because you're weak. You're ignoring it because you're playing a different game entirely. I've watched this play out with creators and public figures repeatedly. The ones who last, who build sustainable influence, who create real impact. They're almost never the ones engaging in constant battles. They're the ones who stay focused on their mission while others exhaust themselves in conflicts that don't matter. Years pass, and the people who were attacking them are forgotten or irrelevant, while they've built something lasting. That's the long game. That's the victory that matters. But you have to be patient. This is crucial. Invisible victories aren't immediately satisfying. You don't get the rush of dopamine that comes from a clever comeback. You don't get the social validation of everyone seeing you defend yourself. You don't get the immediate relief of released aggression. What you get is subtle. It's the accumulation of energy that wasn't wasted. It's the compounding effect of consistency. It's the gradual realization that you've become someone different, someone stronger, someone free. Nietzsche wrote that one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. This is about internal alchemy, the chaos of being attacked, the turmoil of wanting to fight back, the conflict between ego and wisdom. All of this can be transformed into something valuable if you don't react impulsively. You can let it forge you. You can let it reveal parts of yourself that need work. You can let it teach you about your triggers, your insecurities, your attachment to external validation. Every attack is an opportunity if you're willing to see it that way. Not an opportunity to prove yourself, but an opportunity to practice remaining unmoved. To practice choosing who you want to be rather than reacting from who you've been. To practice sovereignty in the face of provocation. This is how you become the person Nietzsche was describing. Not through perfection, but through consistent choice in the direction of your values. Let me be very clear about something because I can feel some of you resisting this. This philosophy is not for everyone. It's not meant to be. If you're still in survival mode, if you're in genuinely dangerous situations, if you're being actively exploited or abused, your first priority is safety and escape, not philosophical ideals about not fighting back. This philosophy is for people who have basic safety and are dealing with social attacks, professional challenges, personal conflicts that aren't existential threats. Context matters enormously. Nietzsche himself distinguished between types of people. He wasn't trying to create a universal morality that everyone should follow. He was describing the path of those who could transcend conventional morality, who could create their own values. If that's not you, if that's not where you are in your journey, that's completely fine. But if you feel the resonance of what I'm describing, if something in you recognizes this truth, then you're probably ready to start practicing it. And practice is the key word. You will fail at this repeatedly. You will react when you're meant to stay centered. You will defend yourself when silence would have been stronger. You will get pulled into arguments you knew you should avoid. This is guaranteed. The question is, can you learn from each failure? Can you recognize the pattern faster next time? Can you develop the awareness to notice the urge to react before you act on it? This is training your nervous system, not just your mind. Your body has been conditioned to respond to threat with fight or flight. When someone attacks you, your sympathetic nervous system activates. Adrenaline flows. Heart rate increases. Rational thought decreases. This is biology, not choice. So you're not just choosing different thoughts. You're reconditioning automatic responses. This takes time. This takes repetition. This takes compassion for yourself when you fall back into old patterns. But every time you successfully choose sovereignty over reactivity, you're strengthening new neural pathways. You're teaching your system that this type of threat doesn't require a fight response. You're expanding your window of tolerance for discomfort. You're becoming genuinely more resilient, not in a toxic way where you suppress your feelings, but in a healthy way where you can feel everything without being controlled by it. Nietzsche emphasized the importance of self-overcoming, of constantly transcending who you were to become who you're capable of being. This is that process in action. The old you needed to fight back, the new you doesn't. The old you derived worth from external validation. The new you is grounded in internal knowing. The old you was reactive. The new you is creative, and you move from old to new through thousands of small choices. Each one slightly uncomfortable, each one building the person you're becoming. Here's what I want you to do. Not as homework, not as an obligation, but as an experiment if you're curious. For the next week, commit to this practice. When someone says something that would normally trigger you, that would normally make you defensive or aggressive, pause. Just pause. Take 3 breaths. Ask yourself, does this require a response from me? Not do I want to respond, but does this genuinely require my energy? Most of the time, the answer will be no. And in those moments, choose silence. Choose non-engagement. Choose to let it pass. And then notice what happens. Notice what happens internally, how your body responds, what stories your mind creates, and notice what happens externally, how the other person reacts, how the situation evolves. Just observe without judgment. This is how you start, not by trying to become some idealized version of an unmovable stoic, but by experimenting with small choices and noticing the results. Over time, this becomes natural. It stops being a practice. It starts being who you are. And when that shift happens, when you realize you genuinely don't feel the need to fight back anymore, you'll understand what Nietzsche was pointing to. You'll understand what invisible victory actually means. It means you've become someone who can't be diminished by external attack because your foundation is internal. It means you've stopped playing games you can never win and started living from a place of genuine power. It means you've realized that the only battle worth fighting is the one with yourself. The constant choice to become who you're meant to be rather than react from who you've been. This is freedom, not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom from needing to do anything. Freedom from the compulsion to defend, to explain, to justify, to prove. Freedom to simply exist in your truth and let that be enough. This is what Nietzsche spent his life trying to articulate. This is what the philosophy of winning without fighting back is really about. So the next time someone attacks you, remember this conversation. Remember that you have a choice. You can fight back and give them your energy, or you can remain centered and keep your power. You can prove yourself to people who don't matter, or you can focus on becoming who you're meant to be. You can win the battle and lose yourself, or you can walk away and win invisibly. The choice is yours. It always has been, but now you see it. Now you understand what's at stake. Now you know what's possible when you stop fighting everyone else and start aligning with your own truth. This is the philosophy. This is the path. This is how you win without fighting back. And if you found value in this, if something here resonated with your experience or shifted how you see conflict, dome a favor. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that like button. Leave a comment sharing your experience with choosing silence over reaction. Not for me, but for the algorithm, so this reaches others who need to hear it. Because this philosophy, this understanding, it's needed now more than ever. The world is full of people fighting battles that don't matter. Be someone different. Be someone who knows their worth without needing to prove it. Be someone who wins invisibly. Thank you for being here. Thank you for engaging with these ideas. I'll be back soon with more philosophy for living well in a chaotic world. Until then, stay sovereign. Stay selective with your energy. And remember that true power doesn't need to announce itself. It simply is.